And again, I think we need someone to say, stand up for the South African worker whose salary is being garnished to the extent that he has nothing left to live on. We need somebody to say, we need people to say, you know what, this cannot be happening. This has to be stopped. And if there is recourse, who takes the recourse? Tony, how would you think? Any suggestions as to how we would go about that? Because individual consumers doesn't I don't think they have the power to be able to do that right now. Firstly, they are so over indebted that they would not have monies left to legally take on a fight like this. Should this be something that gets looked at from a higher level than the individual?
Absolutely. I mean, part of the problem is how we're structuring the economy and the short-term view of many companies. So sure, they're going to give out credit and sell things on credit as much as they can. And those who want to get in at the bottom of it hope that they're going to be able to make some money out of it before the bubble bursts. And that's why there's just this exponential handing out of credit. But I think given the circumstances in many of our workplaces and the destitution of our members, there's going to be a point where workers are going to strike against employers not to affect those garnishee orders. And that's really where we've got to go to, because if there's no more garnishee orders being able to be exercised to deduct the money from workers, then those people handing out reckless debt will soon stop that practice.
Because they then
and that seems the only way. Absolutely. But that seems to be the only way. There's no moral conviction that says they realize this is a problem and they've got to be more diligent in assessing people's credit worthiness or what the impact of that is. And if that's the way they're responding to the economy and poor people are going to have to bear the brunt of it, then poor people must eat back. And one of the ways is to make the system that's giving rise to this unworkable, and that is to stop the garnishee orders. There's already been rumors in the Platinum Belt where, and this is the point that Bobby Gottsell makes, that a lot of the strikes there were driven by the level of indebtedness of those workers in the mines. And those workers are starting to consider just saying they're not paying those loan sharks in the area and they're not paying their debt in many of the areas. And then those companies are going to all be in trouble. It's better to take a long-term view on the economy that ensures that you make a profit around building a solid business, but not do that in these short-term measures that are not sustainable.
And we're not saying don't pay debt. We're not saying do not pay the debt that you have incurred. What we are saying is that there needs to be some regulation as to how much that debt can be. I really have come across people who have paid up to 20,000 Rand on an initial debt of something like 1,500 Rand. That's criminal.
Yeah.
That's criminal. You go to an employee and you say to them, well, how long has this been coming off your salary slip? Like 8 years, 9 years. Do you know when it's going to stop? No. Do you know who you're paying this to? No. Has your HR department spoken to you about this? No. There needs to be some further interaction somewhere along the line. You cannot just say, you know what, this is how much you're paying for the rest of your life. And that's it. You have no other rights. You've got no other recourse. There's nothing that you can do. You've simply got to take this. Zach, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, hopefully that's why consumers are starting to turn to professionals to look for that sort of assistance. Debt counselors, for instance, while that's not their focus, it is something they come up against all the time. And as a debt counselor, I know that I've seen the effect. And when we get involved, we tend to dig into the history of a garnishee order, figure out what's owed. And in fact, sometimes consumers are now getting money back because of overpayment. It is happening. But there are not a lot of debt counselors able to assist people. There are not a lot of companies that are doing this. If the employer starts to do this, they could be very much empowering their staff and improving their situation, because with debt problems come marital problems and all the other social pressures that we've been discussing.
Tony, would you say that the level of over-indebtedness also plays a huge factor in what it is South African workers are then wanting in terms of wage negotiations with the employers?
Absolutely, because the wages are the only income that workers have, and that's the only way that they can survive and mitigate the effect of these garnishee orders and all the other pressures that they have. And so it's going to have a knock-on effect across the economy, starting in the workplaces, starting in wage bargaining rounds, but also starting at the point where I think the system's going to become unworkable, because people are going to have to find a way to step back from that. And at some point, if there's not the regulation to do that, then there's going to be social pressures that responds to what is an orchestrated problem, I believe, in many of the credit providers out there.
Again, it comes down to changing. What are we expecting to now change the mindset of a workforce of millions? as opposed to changing the mindset of credit providers. Zach, Tony, thank you so much for coming in and doing the interview for 24.
Thank you.